A lot has changed since the release of the last Civilizations SMP video, and whether it's for better or worse is for you to decide. Some civilizations fought amongst themselves and fell apart from the inside, while other nations grew and prospered through working together. A lot has changed in my civilization also though. Since the last video we've dodged some dangerous conflicts, but we've also had to fight through others. In an attempt to protect my nation from ruin, I've done my best to avoid conflicts with the other nations, but some fights I just can't avoid. Well, let's get into the story. The first conflict on the server emerged when one of my members, Titanfall, decided to pick a fight with the strongest group on the server, the Industrial Empire. The Industrial Empire, led by Spoon for Life, is a group full of expert PvPers who not only work very well together, but whom also have the most resource-rich plot of land, and they have used these resources to create gear far superior to what my civilization has. One night, when Titan was bored, he decided the Industrial Empire was growing too big, too fast, and he needed to halt their growth, so without my consent, he snuck into their land and griefed their mob farms in an attempt to stop their resource production. When the members of the Industrial Empire logged on the next morning to see all their hard work gone, reduced to a mere crater, they were furious. Immediately after finding their mob farms destroyed, they launched an investigation to determine who was responsible for this crime, and it didn't take long for them to figure it out after being informed Titan was the only person on the server that night before they realized he was responsible for this grief. So, after finding out that one of my members was responsible, Spoon approached me and threatened me with war if I didn't hand over Titan and compensate for their losses. I had a hard decision to make. On one hand, I could give in and abandon my friend for the safety of my civilization, or we could fight an impossible battle against the most powerful civilization on the server to save my friend. Ultimately though, I had to think about all the members of my civilization, and supporting Titan would mean putting their lives in jeopardy, so after a lot of thought, I decided to exile Titan for putting my civilization in danger. Spoon accepted this sacrifice and agreed not to attack us, but now that Titan wasn't under our protection, he was going to be hunted down and killed for his crimes against the Industrial Empire. It was clear that I avoided what would have been a devastating conflict, but I knew more conflicts were on the horizon, so I had to prepare my nation for war. I decided it was time to design a wall for my civilization. I started by creating a base layer of obsidian to make it secure against explosive attacks. Then, to make the wall look nice, I decided to add some basic patterns to the side of it with smooth slabs and cobblestone walls. Finally, I built a small staircase on the side of it to make it more functional. I plan on building this wall around my civilization's borders with some of my members soon on stream, so watch out for that. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. Even though I avoided one major conflict, there was another on the horizon. Revolution was brewing in the neighboring civilization of Oswalden, and this conflict was split into two sides, the rebels and the loyalists, and both sides wanted my support. Now, the rebels were led by Crashmaster, and their gear and coordination were superior to that of the loyalists, so who I should give my support to should have been a simple choice, but it wasn't. Before the revolution emerged, I realized my nation had very few natural resources, so I made an alliance with Meep, the leader of Oswalden, in exchange for some natural resources. So, I had a tough choice to make. I had to decide if I was going to honor my alliance and fight a losing battle in vain, or if I should do what's best for my civilization and join the rebel army. Before I could make my decision, I met up with the rebel leader to negotiate what I would get for helping them. Ultimately, we decided that if I supported them in their revolution, they would give me the same resources that the original government of Oswalden had offered me, and with negotiations out of the way, it was time I made a choice, and ultimately I had to consider what was best for my civilization, and sadly that was supporting the rebellion. With the day of the battle fast approaching, both sides set up camp at different strategic points at each end of the taiga. The very next day the battle had begun, and both sides immediately charged forward and clashed in the middle of the forest. And with the battle at a standstill, me and Crashmaster retreated back to the rebel camp to revise our battle plan. We decided that one-on-one fighting wasn't getting us anywhere, and we needed to split our forces and attack them from behind in order to pick them off one by one as a group. This new strategy immediately paid off as we snuck behind enemy lines and killed Opiver, the Loyalist's greatest soldier. The death of Opiver caused a panic throughout the Loyalists, and they immediately started fleeing back to their camp to regroup. What they didn't know, however, is that we expected this, so we waited behind enemy lines, and as they were fleeing, we picked off a couple of them in the panic. And the remaining few who made it back to the Loyalist camp were surrounded and slaughtered, including their leader, Meep. The death of Meep had marked the end of a long, hard-fought battle in the taiga. All the Loyalists had been killed, and without the gear or motivation to continue, they surrendered to the rebellion. Following the surrender of the Loyalists, the rebellion renamed the nation of Oswalden to be called the Imperium of Man, or the IOM for short. But there was a problem. Instead of taking the Loyalists in under the new regime, the rebellion decided that the Loyalists were to be exiled from the IOM for their past oppression against the new government. I, however, saw this exile as an opportunity to expand my civilization. The exiled members of Oswalden were now lost and nationless, so I approached Meep and offered them citizenship in my civilization in exchange for their loyalty. And with no other options to turn to, they accepted my offer. These were only the first conflicts of the SMP, and I'm sure there will be more soon, so if you're interested in this SMP, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can keep following the lore on this SMP.